Good evening, friends. It is Monday, I think, August 13th, 2018, and this is episode 6 of E2KG Deep Dive. I have the pleasure of being your host tonight. I'm SwissGuard. There's, I think DBqHams is on vacation, and Prime has the night off, and Agasicles is wise enough not to let me on here by myself. So he will be joining us. I think he's poking around on the social media right now, but how you doing, Agasicles?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm alive.
Rough day in the office?
It's been a long weekend, but that's why I like coming on E2KG, because I get to relax and talk video games with my friends. So we have a few stories that actually we had a lot of stories this week in our draft agenda, which has been rather unusual. As we've gone through July and August, it's been kind of a slowish news time. But Agasicles and I have narrowed it down to a few stories that we liked. And we're going to roll with those. We don't necessarily talk about the biggest stories on Deep Dive. We talk about the ones that interest us. And this is more of a industry focus rather than a game focus, which will come tomorrow on E2KG Core Show. So, first story is from Ars Technica. War changes. Fallout 76 is series first in a decade to skip Steam. And this story came out the 6th, which I think was last, Monday. Basically, it came out like right as DBQ and I were starting deep dive last week, and it flowed right into our discussion. So I wanted to make sure that we touched on it again this week and kind of get a guess. Well, one, kind of explore the topic of publisher owned launchers a little bit more. But I really wanted to get Agasicles' input on this because I know he has some strong opinions, and I was kind of lamenting the fact as I was talking with DB, not because DB is a foolish individual. He's quite alert and adept and intelligent, but Agasicles has always been it's kind of one of his soapbox topics. So it's really cool that we get to keep going along these lines. As far as the new story with Bethesda, it says Bethesda has become the latest video game publisher to begin pulling a major game series from rivals' download services. The publisher's latest announcement is about the online RPG Fallout 76, included hints to a first for a 3D Fallout game. It will not be sold via Steam. So, quote in their FAQ, both the beta and the game will be available on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and on PC via Bethesda.net only. So they've confirmed that. And I will be honest, I didn't know Bethesda's .net launcher was a thing. And so apparently it's been around, according to this Ars Technica article, since 2016. And granted, I'm not like a huge PC Bethesda guy, but they have it has featured 2 exclusive free-to-play games during the launch windows: Quake Champions and Fallout Shelter. So it doesn't sound like it's really been used as their like a flagship type platform. But now it will be. Fallout 76, their big title this year, is coming out exclusively on PC on the Bethesda.net app. And the reasoning they gave, I don't see it in this article. I saw it somewhere. Basically, they as far as the networking aspects and the online aspects, they want a tighter control over that they don't feel they can get via Steam. but I think it might also have something to do with 30% cut that Valve would charge. So, Agasicles, when you saw this, I'm imagining you weren't surprised, but I'm also imagining that you're a little perturbed.
Yeah, and since then, I've come down a bit because, yeah, in general, I'm angry, right? Because it bothers me. It's been bothering me that all of this mucky muck. The end result is we as PC gamers have to run multiple publisher client-side applications on our desktops just to play games. It was bad enough when we had to onboard with Steam and we had to run this always online, always connected client. But eventually, we kind of grew to become accustomed to it. I don't know necessarily that that's a good thing, but it was kind of nice to have all of your content fused into one client-side application and just be able to launch and manage everything from there. If it weren't for what really rolled me over on Steam was the notion that they manage all the updates, which is huge, right? Because we used to have to go download individual patches, and even back in the day, every game didn't have an auto updater. So a lot of times you were going and manually downloading patches and applying them yourself. So Steam eventually came to be a good. But then a few years ago, as you mentioned, like 2016, a little earlier, Ubisoft got their own client-side application. EA launched EA Origin. Blizzard.net had its own thing. And for a long time, I refused to get on board with it. But these days, it's like, I don't know that you can be a PC gamer and choose to only live in the Steam ecosystem. It cuts you off from so many games. So this was just yet another one, and it hit me right in the gut because I was squared up and was sold and bought into the notion of playing Fallout 76 this fall.
So, yeah, one of the this is as far as oh, and by the way, I'm going to tie this in with I might as well go ahead and do the other story. We're going to tie this in with what did I see this on? DSO, Dark Side of Gaming. QuakeCon 2018, Bethesda's Pete Hines told IGN that although Fallout 76 will be exclusive to Bethesda.net, their future titles could be released on Steam too. So we haven't seen any confirmations on some of the other titles that Bethesda Bethesda announced at E3 this year, namely Doom Eternal and Rage 2. So he hasn't confirmed whether they be on Steam or not. I guess the important thing is they haven't ruled it out yet.
Right, and I guess I would include the Wolfenstein, whatever it is, expansion or
New Blood or Young Blood or whatever.
Right.
Is that coming out 2018?
No, it's a 2019 release. Okay. Yeah. And what that smells like to me is, excuse my voice is cracking. What that smells like to me is that Bethesda isn't convinced. Bethesda is fine putting their premium RPG franchises on Bethesda.net. So I would expect to see Fallout, Elder Scrolls, and what was their new space opus that's coming out?
I don't remember.
Star something, whatever.
Star. It's not Starlink, but
so maybe,
yeah, that's going to be a ways away. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, but maybe we would expect to see those on Bethesda.net, which is kind of crappy. And I guess this creates an interesting dynamic, right? What it smells like to me is they're saying the things that we know we can sell, we don't need you, Steam, and so therefore we're not going to quid pro quo you and put our stuff on your platform. Now, the snooty counter side of that it smells like to me is that, oh, but by the way, these things that we're not certain that people are going to flock to us in droves to play, the big first-person shooters, we think those will sell better on Steam. So you're welcome to have the hash and trash, which it just makes it interesting, right? Because then what could happen is Steam could go, you know what? If you don't sell your stuff through us, we're just not going to host your games at all, right? They could push big box publishers, maybe. I don't know. The big problem is the specifics of the Steam financial model have been forever shrouded in mystery, and one wonders, so EA doesn't sell all their new stuff through Steam. Activision Blizzard clearly isn't going to sell all their new stuff through Steam. If Steam doesn't have Activision and EA, now Ubisoft sells stuff through Steam, and there's some type of API.
I think it links into Uplay or somehow.
Right, because Gray and I we bought Star Trek Bridge Crew through Steam, and then it cross links over to Uplay. So maybe there's some agreement that the two of them have worked out. But I mean, at what point does it not benefit Steam to host the hashing trash from big publishers if they're not hosting it in bulk, right? If there's not some type of efficiency gain or large OpEx efficiency factor for them, does Steam just go, you know what? If you're not going to host all your stuff here, then we don't want it.
I don't know why Steam would want to do that though, because at this, you start doing that and you start seeing, okay, nothing on EA on Steam. They say, thanks but no thanks, Bethesda, to some of the stuff from Bethesda, due to the waffling from Bethesda. You don't got anything Blizzard anymore, Activision. So at some point, Steam is going to cross the line from being the de facto. I guess it's already no longer. It's starting to become no longer the de facto PC platform. But when people think PC gaming, Steam is up there. If they stop getting the AAA tentpole titles out of spite, they're just harming themselves. They become a second tier platform full of indie titles and AA publishers.
But what I'm saying is that's partially where so new things for EA don't go to Steam. New things for Activision, Blizzard don't go to Steam as it is. They still get 2K stuff. They've worked out some partnership with Ubisoft apparently, but and now Bethesda's pulling the plug and saying that they're not going to put their premium content on there. So out of the 5 big publishers, right, they're already down to roughly 2.
But what is the benefit to them to strain relations or burn bridges with the remaining publishers?
So I guess again, this is part of the thing we don't know. I don't know what the OpEx is for maintaining those connections to publishers' content, right? I don't know if those are actually hosted on Valve servers. I don't know if those are all hosted in a Valve, if it's all managed via a Valve operation center. Go ahead.
So here's what I'm thinking. Why I think it's intriguing about what Bethesda's doing, like the half and half. They're treating Steam, I'm almost thinking, less as a storefront and more as a hybrid storefront advertising platform. And what I mean by that is Elder Scrolls and Fallout, like you said, they sell itself. Fans of those franchises, they sell themselves, excuse me. Fans of those franchises they know about the games coming out. They will seek them out. They will play them in, whatever fashion Bethesda makes available to them. So if Bethesda can know that they're not going to take a hit in the pocket in the sales numbers by going to Steam or away from Steam, they'll gladly take that 30%, which is apparently what Valve takes a cut from. As far as Doom and Rage, those are games that would appeal to perhaps a different demographic than your Elder Scrolls fans. And those are games where you have shooters on Steam for various varieties, and then you slap a Doom Eternal up there with Prey, and it's intriguing. Oh, Prey's on sale, maybe I'll give that a try. And they're pulling in a different constituency of gamers, and to them, perhaps that 30% cut, they're not going to make that up by hosting it themselves. They're going to lose enough players where that 30% doesn't. It's more profitable to them to pay Steam 30% to advertise the game for them, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you that that's the model now. I guess what I'm musing about is at some point in recent history, this was a similar situation with other software vendors, right? Where there was a point in time where Microsoft felt that there was value in continuing to offer a disk-based version of Microsoft Office in retail stores, right? Or where Adobe felt that there was value in continuing to offer a boxed version of its Creative Suite in stores. But at a certain point, they went that mixture of cost, right, which is always inherently less profitable and less efficient, right? You get the biggest bang for your buck when you consolidate everything and everything has one distribution pipeline. At what point does that start to become marginally profitable, less profitable, right? And people go, well, I should just consolidate my distribution pipeline into my own platform, which apparently is what the publishers decided to do, right? Many of them, and stop allocating any distribution throughput to Steam at all.
I guess the other question was, how long did it take the publishers to catch up with Steam regarding, like what you said, the ability to run auto updates, the ability to have, a decent chat experience, voice experience for their clients, and maybe just that starting to finally catch up. They, EA, I think, acquired somebody to get the Origin service going on, and I guess that's kind of where we're at. I mean, personally, like, I just think that most of it, like you said, it's driven by profit. Obviously, they're not going to pull work on themselves if it's going to cost them more. But I'd rather them pull that. DB and I had this discussion. I'd rather them pull the work away from Valve and take the extra profits and by hosting it themselves and streamlining that distribution, as you said, rather than raising prices on game titles. Right? We've been at $60 as your core price point for games for decades now, right? And so if they can recoup some cost by cutting out the middleman, in theory they're passing that savings on to gamers. Is that worth you having 5 launchers rather than 1?
No, for me it's not. I was thinking about it as you were going through it, and I was like, that poses an interesting question, and I was thinking through the math. I mean, no, like I would pay $70 for a game for the publishers to feel more comfortable doing that pass through to EA. Now, if you're going to literally take me up to 30%, and you're going to ask me, well, but are you willing to pay $80 per game? Right, take a third of that cost and tack it on. I think I'm okay with that too, right? Because there aren't that many full price PC games that I buy per year, and there's a lot of games that I buy that are in that $20 to $40 point, and I'd be fine paying a third more for them to all be hosted on Steam and me to have one client. Because right now, and again, part of this, so admittedly, part of this is maybe my extreme use case, right? The problem for me now is it's not just getting all those clients and all those games on a PC, but running a backup gaming PC and playing some of the community type games now means, whereas I used to, running a Steam client on a PC just means I could just go into my games library and pick, right? But I have to remember, sometimes I actually have to write down, right? Oh, I need to remember to install the Epic launcher on the other PC and put Fortnite over there, right? So, and I don't think that's super unusual, because I think a lot of gamers run a gaming desktop and have a gaming laptop that they would have to do and manage that between as well. So no, for me, it's an unsanitary experience, right? Having, the Epic launcher, the Blizzard launcher, Origin, Uplay, and the Steam client on a gaming PC. And on top of that, then what it really means I have to do, and I've done this for a long time anyway, it also means I have to have a games folder on my desktop, because each of those clients at the end says, do you want to drop a shortcut on your desktop? I have to have a games folder where I consolidate all of them and put them on all one place, so I don't have to go swimming around between 5 different clients to understand what I have installed on my PC.
Well, I will say that I understand that frustration in that, I have some, because you know how Ubisoft from time to time will release a game for free on Uplay, but you have like 30 days to download it. So I have Beyond Good and Evil, which I've never played, somewhere on my PC. I have Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, also picked up from a free weekend that I saw. I forget that I have those. And like when we're talking about, okay, I need to pick some games for my Swiss Plays segment. Sometimes I'll just open Steam and I'll glance at my library, or I'll look at some of my wish list of some PC games. And for me, like psychologically, I generally go to Steam. I got the Steam. I also have Battle.net client right there on my taskbar. I forget that I have Uplay, and so it's I like. That's one nice thing about the old days of the PC. Like I feel like I could think about my games as just installed applications, and right now I don't. I've come to the point where which is probably good from the publisher's perspective. I think about going to the launcher. I don't launch Witcher Enhanced Edition or BattleTech from from Windows. I go to Steam and I go to my library and I launch it there, and so I can see that being a problem. That being said, that's a little thing for me. And while, if the day comes when they start charging $64.99 for a game or even $69.99 for a game, I'll be fine with it because I understand the economics of game development in the 21st century. But, $80 is that's a lot. And for me, $10 a game, like I can deal with the annoyances a little bit if I can save $10 because I'm a cheap gamer. But so yeah, I'm not as like I don't think DB. I didn't get the sense DB is very upset about it either. So that's really why I wanted to get your perspective on it.
Well, and I mean not to talk about him while he's here, but to talk about our perspective of him. DB's down the path of subscribing to these services where it's much more all you can eat for him.
Yeah.
Right. So he subscribes to EA Access or whatever it is, and so that stuff just gets served to him. So it's kind of zero impact to him now. And I think and he subscribes to Game Pass right on Xbox. So already he's got a large percentage of the total gaming content that comes out per year covered in kind of these all-you-can-eat subscription services, and I would suspect he wouldn't, necessarily entirely shy away from the notion of subscribing for another one or two of them if they mean, fewer purchases of discrete games, right? So
if we swing back real quick to the actual Fallout 76 story, and like you said, this hybrid model with using Steam perhaps for your shooters and using Bethesda Net for your RPGs. And quick fact check, it's Starfield is the name of that new game. But do you think it's a purely economic decision, or do you think they're just trying to dip their toe in the water type thing? And if Fallout 76, there's no torches and pitchforks about the Bethesda, and they don't see a significant drop in adopters of the game, that the Doom Eternal announcement will be right around the corner. And
No, I mean I think Bethesda is very smart. I think they have a lot of brilliant people that work there. I think it's the way we painted it. I think they have absolute intents to, keep, when it comes to their breadwinner franchises, right? The ones that really keep the company afloat. I think they have every intention to sell those in a manner that allows them to keep all that money to themselves. And I think, as you mentioned, right, their intent is to utilize Steam as needed as an advertising / co-location / ease of discovery platform for them to host other games on. Particularly for their second party developers, right? So maybe that's not the right term. Those maybe those developers are first party, and are actually owned by Bethesda, but I don't think Avalanche is owned by Bethesda. I think they do work for Bethesda. So I think it feels like games that they're going to publish, but aren't their bread and butter. They're going to allow those to go to Steam. And again, specifically the first person shooter genre, because that is a super popular genre on Steam, and it's kind of the place you go to find that content. The thing that's weird for me is when we compare that to what Epic is doing. I guess what continues to be weird for me, and this is a Bethesda specific thing, so a little bit off the global topic. It's very hard for me to put my finger on what Bethesda's identity is. Like, they are this big RPG factory, but as we talked about during E3, right, they've kind of quietly come around to having this shady side of the ultra-violent shooter. But it feels like, I want to make sure I say this in a politically correct way. It feels like it's the friend that's your friend, but you don't want to be seen with out in public, right? So Wolfenstein, Doom, and Rage are like you invite them to the party, but you don't let them into like the VIP room, or however you want to say it. And so it feels like there's a little distance between what I think of as Bethesda core and some of those franchises, and that's why I feel like it seems like it's okay for them to sell them on Steam. But again, when I compare that to Epic, what's weird to me about that is, but then why do you fragment yourself as a publisher in that way? Seems kind of weird. But maybe it's okay for Bethesda because they're like, well, we don't really feel like that's our identity. It's just a thing that we've kind of stumbled into.
Well, here's the thing about Bethesda, and I never think about Bethesda in the same way I think about Blizzard, right? Like, you think Blizzard, and they have Diablo and World of Warcraft and StarCraft, but like you said, they have like a whole identity, and to the point where you can have BlizzCon, and it's like a massive thing. If Bethesda had a convention, BethesdaCon, like, I mean, I'm sure some of the game industry, like diehards, would go, or the Elder Scrolls, they probably do, and you're probably about to fact check me and show my ignorance here, but I don't think that it just doesn't feel like people think about Bethesda as a single studio. I think that their IPs are bigger than they are as a publisher, if that makes any sense. Like, Blizzard to me is like their own entity. They have their own vibe, and their games flow from that. EA is the same way. EA is popular as a publisher for an entirely different set of reasons, but they're so big and they have so many prominent, like EA is synonymous with sports franchises. They have a thing, and of course they have a wide variety beyond that, but they have a publisher identity. Bethesda, I just think the Fallouts and the Elder Scrolls and stuff, and even the Wolfensteins, those IPs are bigger than Bethesda. So I don't see it being as a difficult thing for them to splinter that and put whatever IP on whatever platform would be most profitable for them.
Yeah, so Bethesda has kind of stumbled into their own convention. I got to check one thing before.
Oh, QuakeCon.
Right.
But see, that's not even a Bethesda thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They stumbled into it by purchasing id. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's like it's id's identity. It's not really Bethesda's. But just like you mentioned, people go to that though for shooters. They don't go there to hope to see a big reveal about Fallout.
Right. And when you were mentioning like what Bethesda's identity is, the dark side, and it's like, I actually thought of id, one because they bought id, but two because they're appealing to the inner child of a lot of gamers, the immature 14-year-old, which this isn't anything to do with Bethesda, but Sucker Punch, you know how they got their name? The founders of Sucker Punch, when they were coming, they had a list of names, right? And they needed to choose one. So one of them showed it to his wife, and she goes, "I don't care whichever ones you want, just don't name it Sucker Punch." And they said, "Whichever one my wife says she doesn't want, that's would be what a 14-year-old boy would want." So that's what they named it. That's how it got the name Sucker Punch.
So what would be really interesting to know, again, there's pieces of this topic that we just are behind the veiled curtain, and so we don't know. What will be interesting to know is what is the relationship, because technically, if I talk about like people with seats in the boardroom, right, it should have an equal seat to Bethesda. It is technically owned by ZeniMax, not Bethesda. But I think the way it works is I'm pretty sure that corporate culture-wise, Bethesda, it seems like Bethesda employees rule the roost. And that's where kind of the direction of the company from a gaming perspective comes from. And then, so I feel like Todd Howard definitely has a bigger voice seated at the table than, whoever the director of id Studios is. So yeah, but yeah, like I said, it feels like to me that it's going to be, the premium content is going to go on Bethesda.net.
Well, I think it's interesting that they're taking this tact, because we're seeing Blizzard trying to pull more and more of their IPs into their launcher and Battle.net. EA, of course, has gone completely to where they're trying to become a streaming service. So it'll be neat to see how this evolves.
Well, the weird thing is as you mentioned with Blizzard, it's kind of, I'm having a hard time exactly articulating, but it's kind of in reverse, right? Because Activision is the big company that bought Blizzard, but Blizzard has the platform, but Activision is now looking to push all of their big boy content onto Battle.net. So yeah, so I don't know. Maybe there's more. I think there are some other analogs of this in the PUBG story as well.
All right. So as Agasicles alluded to, we actually had a story, and I probably should have mentioned this at the top because we usually run those down before we start our discussion. But I'm just so excited about gaming PC platform talk. This is the second week in a row that we've done it. So PUBG, I got who found this one? Somebody found this one.
Yeah, either myself or Prime. I'm not sure which.
Gamesindustry.biz. PUBG developers launch Fix PUBG campaign. Devs create roadmap for the next 3 months. Promise changes and improvements. So PUBG Corp has today revealed a new Fix PUBG campaign to address problems that have been, quote, limiting PUBG's true potential. According to the PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds developer, fix the game is a phrase that we've been hearing a lot lately. The developer has created a roadmap for the next 3 months with specific details about it, that it plans to deliver changes and improvements that fans have been asking for, including updates to both client and server performance, anti-cheat measurements, faster and smarter matchmaking, plus bug fixes and quality of life tweaks. So I think both you and I, did we both pick this, suggest this as an article?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. All right, I'll let you go first. Why did you want to include this tonight?
So I tagged this article to be queued up tonight because I had a recent conversation over this weekend that contained topics relative to this with a Twitter. I won't call him a follower because we follow each other. Named KMed, Kevin Medeiros, I believe his name is, who's a developer. And he and I were both talking about PUBG and the problems with PUBG's quality. And one of the things I mentioned was that it's a systemic problem, institutionalized problem, unfortunately at this point, that is associated with all these alternate business models, right? Of the early access, early preview, Kickstarter, crowdsource, beta, and I'm like, and you guys have all heard me say this before, like I'm tired of it. Everybody's chasing Mojang and trying to be what Minecraft was, and Minecraft was a very special and unique thing, and people are trying to replicate it, and they're doing it in very broken and sharded ways. But my problem is PUBG has been around enough in a money-earning state that it is inexcusable what the quality of that game is at this point, as far as graphical fidelity, as far as hardware optimization. They got their shorts taken by Epic. Now, granted, Epic is a full-time development shop, right? PUBG kind of grew up out of grassroots, so I could kind of understand that. But it's representative of a broken business model and broken product development model, and not just specific to PUBG. What I said to KMed is, I'm like, look, make your game, test your game, give me a preview of your game, fix your game, and then sell me your game. Like, this interminable, I'm going to be in some half behind deployment state for years is ridiculous, and in my opinion, should be unacceptable to consumers. So that's why I picked it out, because this notion that I give the devs credit for kind of getting on board with the grassroots movement. From a strict software engineering perspective, what the hell are you going to get done in 3 months when you haven't gotten it done in 2 years? Like, 3 months is not a development like that.
Well, okay. It is if they had a mature model in the first place. So, yeah, I agree with your sentiments completely. But, all this talk about, like you said, early access, and like the theory behind it is, oh, well, we get customer feedback and we can make the game evolve towards customer taste. Okay, in theory, that's an agile development methodology, right? You have your stable game and you're like, oh, we'd want, widget X in the game. Oh, all right, well, we'll put it in a sprint, and in a month or two, we'll have it out. But that's not what this is. Okay, they did not have a limited but very stable product in the platform to build on. The game was broken and buggy, so you can't be focusing on feature updates or, as they mentioned in this article on GamesIndustry.biz, lawsuits and whatnot. It feels like a very scattershot. It's an immature development model, and it's probably due to the fact that they're a rather independent developer and didn't have good project management. But it's not something that, this idea of constant evolution, it requires work up front, and it requires, more so than work up front, it requires discipline up front. Because you need to know, okay, what features can I implement now? What features should I implement later? And you need to have the discipline to focus on what you can achieve, in that shorter timeline, and trust that your game can absorb further content updates and further maps and whatever as time goes on. But that requires an architecture to do it. This has been, it struck me like, it rose to prominence. And then I think that they lost focus on the fact that, they still had problems to solve, and they were just seeing the money rolling in until Epic kind of stole the show.
Well, you nailed the vast majority of the things I was going to hit, right? Like, an agile development model works when you're contracted for a long-term thing, right? I think people have tried to take that and map that to this notion of, I'm gonna incrementally charge customers who are coming through my drive-through, right? Agile works because you make a pact, right? Agile works because you make a sacred agreement to deliver a thing, and you agree to spend the period of time between beginning and end collaborating and working together to formulate the vision for that thing over a long period of time. It doesn't work, I don't think, when you charge me the same amount you charge me for a hamburger and tell me that I'm purchasing an agreement to a pact that was made amongst a bunch of strangers with with a fifth degree unrelated party, right? It doesn't work because the whole thing about Agile is collaboration, but collaboration virtualized across a body of hundreds of thousands of people isn't really what Agile was built around.
Ultimately, one side's a developer and one side's the person that wants the product. And when push comes to shove, the person that wants the product will dictate what goes into that product. And the developer is basically there to say that's not feasible, or that if it is feasible, then they do it. So like you said, if you have millions of people, there's no direction.
Right. And what concerns me about this, right, what I would have said to them, I guess what I would say to them now is, so now you're going to commit to a 3-month burly brawl, right, of just junking in fixes. And I'm like, why am I going to pay you? So it smells to me like your architecture is kind of broken or not as flexible and supple as it needs to be. Why am I going to buy into the promise of, I don't want you to rush to junk in fixes on top of a broken thing, right? This whole you and I know this whole notion of we don't build on top of bad code, right? It's better to stop, tear it all down, and restructure it, and build from a known position. So that, again, that's a little software engineering nerdism there, but
the big thing for me was just the marketing speak sound of, we've heard you.
Right.
But gosh darn it, we're gonna fix the bugs. And it's just like, really, it's like a year after. It's just, right. It's kind of, it strikes me as inauthentic and pathetic. So, right. One interesting tidbit though, like you said, as far as like this whole model of, it's quote early access, but you're still charging full price everywhere, and it's basically released, but you can hide behind the fact that, oh, well, we're still in beta perpetually. Game Inform, I think it was Game Informer, recently had an editorial up from their editors saying that they're changing their review policy. So, and I think Fortnite in this case was the one that drove it, in that, like, okay, Fortnite's out, it's making money, people obviously play it, people obviously know what it's like, but they couldn't officially review it until whoever declares, oh well, we're at version 1.0 now. And it's like they felt really disingenuous putting a Fortnite review out months into the zeitgeist. So I think that actually drove them. And I think their official policy is, if you're collecting money for a game and you've monetized your game, it is open for review as game entity, and no more hiding behind these labels, which I completely understand, and I think is probably a good thing.
So still creates a bit of a conundrum, right? It'll be interesting to see this, because how do you review a game that is a game as a service without getting into the business of reviews as a service, right? Because if you're going to review the game in a certain state and assign a score to it, as they update, you're going to have to update, right? You're not necessarily going to have to update with every monthly patch, but when they do a major release that packs it, you're going to have to go back and re-review the game, right?
Well, we've seen this with No Man's Sky and No Man's Sky Next. I think a lot of online outlets have taken the time to reevaluate the game and see, what improvements have been made, and if the overall experience is better. And I don't really see that being a problem, because I think as gamers, if a publisher releases a major update, or a developer releases a major update to a title, we're curious about how that's going to change the experience. We're going to talk about it. So, I think that's just the state of things now.
Well, and my only caveat to that would be that I agree with you. I think that works today. My question is, how does that work when you start to scale it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, yeah, I think there's something in here to be said about lamenting the loss of the heritage of a print magazine. Like there's something like I just remember little kid Greg being excited about his issues of Nintendo Power and EGM and reading all the reviews, and now it's like I don't know.
Right.
But that's just old guy nostalgia. All right. I think we're coming along to our 40-ish, 45-minute. Do you want to hit this last story on Monster Hunter just because it's interesting?
Sure. Yeah, we can.
Monster Hunter World removed from sale in China. This is from PC Gamer, although I've seen it on a few other outlets. Chinese regulators ordered Tencent to remove the game from its Wii game platform. So it says recently set the record for the biggest Japanese game launch on Steam, doubling the mark set by the previous record holder, Dark Souls 3. But in China, authorities have ordered the game removed from Tencent's Wii game platform. So we don't actually even know why they ordered them to remove the game. But according to Morningstar, Chinese regulators had received a, quote, large number of complaints about the game prior to the cancellation of its operating license. And one Morningstar analyst suggested that it could be the game's depiction of corpses. And one reason why I like this article from PC Gamer to go over it, they did mention Chinese government blocked access to World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King in 2009 over its portrayal of skeletons. So, heavily censored, I don't know if I guess it's the right word. The government can actually, because of content, just say no mas. So we'll see. They did mention that, it didn't take long for them to make a tweak to in-game models and reduce the core or something to allow World of Warcraft back, because that's a huge moneymaker and this is obviously a huge market. So we'll see what happens. Owners apparently have until August 20th to apply for a refund, or they can opt to keep it, although there's no guarantee, quote, that it will remain playable. So, we'll see. It's interesting. It always strikes me as interesting that the hoops that developers and companies have to jump through to tap into the Chinese market.
They want those 4 billion sales.
Yeah.
Or 8 billion or whatever it is today.
All right. If you don't have any other commentary on that particular story, I think we might call it a night.
All right.
You have any plugs?
If you want, well, I mean, if you're watching live or if you hear about this live, you might have time to catch it. If not, you can catch me next week. So I will be going live on the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, my streaming channel on YouTube here at 11 o'clock. So 11 p.m. Eastern. So all during the month of August, regularly scheduled live stream times on that channel. Again, Rounding Off Infinity on YouTube. All right, 4 a.m. on Monday mornings and 11 p.m. on Monday nights. So I'll be continuing my Let's Play of The Last of Us Remastered, revisiting that arguably maybe the greatest title ever launched on the PlayStation 3, and then appearing on the PlayStation 4 as the remastered, replaying through some of that in preps for the 2019 drop of The Last of Us 2.
All right, cool. Tomorrow night, we got E2KG, the core show, the gamer experience show. And I think it'll be you and I again, and maybe Prime. And I will be reporting out on Nier Automata. So
very cool. I've been liking your achievements on PSN.
Been seeing that. All right. I guess that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And have a good night.